Where most fear to tread, they do their racing. Welcome to Mud, Sweat and Gears. After day one of the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, the Mitsubishi Pajero of Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer led the overall and Class T standings. Second in Class T were multiple SA champions R.B. Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser, with rally ace Enzo Kuhn and Francois Jourdan leading Class D in the Works Mitsubishi Colt. Despite a spectacular entrance to a day one service point, Nars LaRue and Henny de Steger were second in Class D in another Colt, with Jean-Pierre Joubert and Errol Hodgson leading Class E in a Toyota Hilux. Second in Class E were Bolibaspan 500 organizer Yanni Visser and Christopher Niekirk in another Toyota Hilux, in welcome respite for competitors and service crews after a grueling day. At the overnight halt, the special vehicle category was led by Mark Corbett and Juan Moore in the Jimco, with the pair coming in ahead of early day one pace setters Greg Harvey and Boy Stone in the Queen Motorspares Castrol Jimco. Comeback kid Marius Beaurain led Class B in the impressive Mighty Mag, with Newton Love running second to Beaurain in the Quick Fit Sandmaster after a solid day one performance. The overnight results made for some interesting reading, with developments in the various classes tailor-made for some dramatic racing on the final leg back to the finish in Gaborone. On the quad front, corrected time put the Brasco refrigeration Yamaha ridden by Mark Breckel at the front of the field. Second to Breckel was championship contender Brendan Badenhorst on the CJ Yamaha, with Paul Chomsa on the Ansa FMF Yamaha in third place. For the Quad Racer Brigade, it had been a long and bruising day, with tough and varied terrain putting a strain on both riders and machinery. A good position for Mark Breckel at the end of day one, but the challenges were queuing up behind him. For the Quad Brigade, endurance and a little luck here and there would be major factors on the final leg back to Gaborone. Overnight results left Darrell Curtis on the AGA LG Castrol KTM at the top of the leaderboard in the motorcycle category. Curtis also led the open class ahead of Errol Dalton on the factory Honda, with the day one demise of pre-race favourite Alfie Cox a major talking point at the overnight halt. In the 250 class, Rian Finikirk led AGA LG Castrol KTM teammate Elmer Simons, with a good battle between the pair on the cards on the homeward leg of the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. 200 class championship leader Barry Creel on a KTM was firmly ensconced in the top 10 after another impressive ride on day one, with the KwaZulu-Natal star leading the category ahead of Wayne Farmer. Out on the Russell Campbell Racing Kawasaki, Farmer had a good day and is seen here wasting little time in getting past the Joubert Hodgson Toyota Hilux on his way to the overnight halt. The overnight motorcycle leaderboard set up the prospect of some interesting homeward-bound tussles in the various classes. The leaders in each category all faced pressure situations, and it was going to be a case of survival of the fittest. We're all set for plenty of mud, sweat and gears in the off-roader, the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, Day 2. A relaxed atmosphere and camaraderie at the overnight halt is always a feature of the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, and this year an enterprising group set up satellite TV to watch the rugby test between South Africa and England. There's always plenty to eat and drink, and there's never a shortage of topics of conversation. Here and there, impromptu sing-along sessions get underway, and it all encompasses the spirit of off-road racing.
Country road, I can hear a voice.
Competitors and service crews welcome the respite offered by the overnight halt, but behind the scenes, race organisers are still hard at work. Over 6,000 man-hours are spent planning and staging the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, with 126 race officials on duty. Among them are an intrepid band of enthusiasts who manage and control the various refuel stops along the route.
We're responsible for the last 2 years for running the Toyota fuel stop with the family and friends of Old Billy. And everybody here is quite a mixed audience. It's from farmers and scientists and teachers, the whole group, and everybody is having fun here. We all do it because we enjoy the outdoors and also involved in the 4x4, specifically off-race, of our main interest, and that's why we're doing it. And we love it, and we hope we're going to be here for quite a number of years to come.
An outward loop on the Day 2 route would take competitors deeper into the Botswana bush before backtracking back to the finish in Gaborone. It was cold and misty, with the overnight halt area looking like a Roman encampment from days of yore. Everyone was warmly wrapped up against the cold, with overnight leaders Neil Woolrich and Kenny Scholthammer waiting to get proceedings underway in the factory Mitsubishi Pajero. There was time for a last-minute consultation between Woolrich and a member of the Mitsubishi service crew before the overall race leaders were flagged away. With a healthy overnight lead, the name of the game for Woolrich and Scholthammer would be to conserve the Pajero and try and control the pace from the front. It was up to other crews to do the chasing and take the risks. Some early morning condensation was a minor irritation for the Pajero crew, while back at the start, special vehicle leaders Mark Corbett and Juan Moore were also under starters' orders in the Jimco. Right behind them were Greg Harvey and Boy Stone in the Queen Motorspares Castrol Jimco, with the pair delighted with the performance of a car that for the first time was running on a manual gearbox. For the front runners and those doing the chasing in the various categories, there were some interesting tactical permutations to be considered. The Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser pair of Arpi Reinecker and Robin Houghton were looking a little pensive at the start. They had a double problem, and that they'd ground to make up on Woolrich and Scholthammer, and were themselves under pressure from the impressive Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smelberger in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. The fact that they were carrying official Toyota hopes on the desert race put a little extra pressure on Reinecker and Houghton. In only their second season in off-road racing, Wiechelt and Smelberger were proving to be something of a handful for more established crews. The distinctive yellow Toyota Land Cruiser hounded Reinecker and Houghton throughout Day 1, and the scrap between the Toyota entries was one of the more enticing tidbits offered on Day 2. Behind the two Land Cruisers, the third car away in the special vehicle category was the Cornbake Foods Jimco, in the hands of Shamir Variawa and Bucks Carolyn. Chasing after the Jimco was Class B overnight leader Marius Beaurain, who was back in harness after taking a sabbatical for a season or two. Race cam action from the Mitsubishi cult of Class D leaders Enzo Kuhn and Francois Jourdan, who were under pressure from a number of quarters. Better known as a rally driver, the talented Kuhn has taken to off-road racing like a duck to water. But the Class D leaders were under attack from Hannes Hrobler and Richard Leake in the factory Nissan, running in Class T. Although running in Class T, the Hrobler-Leake Nissan is near standard, with the pair picking up points while they wait for a state-of-the-art vehicle to come out of the Nissan workshop. Also involved in an interesting early Days 2 scrap were two Toyota Land Cruiser crews. The father and son combination of Schumi and Karl van Vuren were trying to close in on Hrobler and Leake, and were in turn being chased by Pete Haasbroek and Christo Bosch. Tagged on at the end of this little group were Nars LaRue and Henny Terstege in the second Mitsubishi cult, and not far behind them were Class E leaders Jean-Pierre Joubert and Errol Hodgson in the Toyota Hilux. Still running at the front of the quad category was Mark Breckel on the Brasco refrigeration Yamaha. Riders are taking a pounding from the thorn bushes, with Breckel under attack from Brendan Bartenhorst on the CJ Yamaha. The thick sand and difficulty with route markings were also proving to be a handful for the quad competitors, who were having a tough time of it. Behind the two front runners, Paul Chomsa was going along steadily on the Answer FMF Racing Yamaha, but looming up behind him was a determined Jacques Struwik, who was looking for his first national championship win on the Answer FMF Yamaha. With the trademark flag fluttering from the back of the quad, Struwik was picking up the pace and had Chomsa in his sights. While the quads went their merry way, there were problems for Mitsubishi Pajero pair Frikkie Botha and Wiel scribe Elza Tiart, who would eventually be classified as the last crew home. Botha and Tiart were still stranded when bike leader Daryl Curtis blasted past them on the AGA LG Castrol KTM. Curtis took control of proceedings when pre-race favourite Alfie Cox dropped out on Day 1 and was belting along as though there were no tomorrow. It was also full speed ahead for 250 class leader Elmer Simons on another of the AGA LG Castrol KTM entries, and veteran Jeremy Davies, who was charging up the open category leaderboard on another KTM. Also going well was Jay Goodseats, who was second in the 250 class on the Miller Moore Honda Racing entry, while behind him the Russell Campbell Racing Kawasaki, ridden by Wayne Farmer, had moved into the lead in the 200 category. We'll be back with more Mud, Sweat and Gears from the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. Welcome back for more Mud, Sweat and Gears from the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. There was an advance guard waiting for overall leaders Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer when the pair arrived at the designated service point. As has become the norm for the pair on recent events, they bypassed the service area and just kept going. The ploy, made possible by an enlarged fuel tank, saved the Mitsubishi Pajero pair valuable time and entrenched their lead. Behind the Pajero, the first of the special vehicles into the service point was the Jimco of Mark Corbett and Juan Moore, with the crew grabbing some quick refreshment while service crew went to work. Not far behind the Corbett-Moore combination were Arpi Reinecker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. The pair were still involved in a tremendous scrap with the Land Cruiser of Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smalberger, and there was a flurry of activity around the factory entry. The object of the exercise was to get Reinecker and Houghton back on the road in the shortest possible time. Some slick work from the service crew saw Reinecker and Houghton on their way again with a minimum of lost time. While the Toyota crew rejoined the fray, there were problems for Greg Harvey and Boy Stone, who arrived at the service point with the Castrol Queen Motors Spares Jimco sporting a flat front left tyre. That led to some more frantic activity while the wheel was changed and the Jimco recharged with enough fuel to get the pair to the finish in Gaborone. More good work from service personnel quickly saw Harvey and Stone on their way with their immediate target centered around catching Corbett and Moore. Also into the service area were Enzo Kuhn and Francois Jourdan in the Mitsubishi Colt, which was leading Class D. There to meet them were a group of Daimler Chrysler management, with Kuhn taking time out for a quick bite and a chat with his girlfriend. It was all very relaxed in the Kuhn pit, but over at the Toyota Hilux, driven by the Birkin brothers, Andrew and Chris, mechanics were busy with some running repairs. The Birkins didn't look overly concerned, with the pair leading Class E. In the quad class, Brendan Badenhorst was in front again and hurriedly gulping down liquid refreshment, while a four-legged supporter wondered what all the fuss was about. Badenhorst lost a minimum of time in the service area, and also taking in plenty of liquid was bike category leader Daryl Curtis. The AGA LG Castrol KTM rider had a healthy lead in both the overall and open class categories, but pit crew were keen to get him back on the route as quickly as possible. While Curtis went back into battle, Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer were still calmly turning the screws on the rest of the car field. They were being tracked by a helicopter flown by veteran pilot Pete Fillion, who's been on every Toyota 1000 Desert Race, with this year's event his swan song. Over the years, many a cameraman has had the affable Fillion to thank for the quality of his aerial shots.
The thing that stands out most in this desert rally is the sportsmanship that exists between the top class to the bottom class. It's something that you don't get anywhere. You know, I came in thinking, first of all, for argument's sake, the bike riders, a bunch of hoo-ha's and so forth. But you've got to see the dedication and the professionalism and the help that they give one another. And it's inspiring. It's like a rejuvenation every year. It restores my faith in human nature.
Still trucking along at the front of the field were Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer in the Mitsubishi Pajero. Both are former motorcycle stars, and in place of numb bums and battered joints, now like to do their off-road racing in comparative comfort. The pair were now in full command, and barring the unforeseen, were heading for a comfortable victory. There were more big spectator turnouts along the Day 2 route, with Mark Corbett and Juan Moore still going strong at the front of the special vehicle field. The Jimco was also running second overall to the factory Pajero, but behind them, there was plenty of drama. In the battle raging over second and third in Class T, the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser of Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smalberger had now moved ahead of the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser of Arpi Reinecker and Robin Houghton. The factory Toyota pair were now a little under the whip and had no option but to charge as hard as they could and take a few chances. First priority for the pair was to regain second place from Wiechelt and Smalberger, with Reinecker starting to throw the big Land Cruiser around with gay abandon. Going along at a more sedate pace and still leading Class D were Enzo Kun and Francois Jordan in the factory Mitsubishi Colt. The pair were having their best run of the season, but stray cattle were an ever-present danger. Problems too for quad leader Brendan Badenhorst.
Having problems? Yeah, but the sprocket's wearing out, right?
While Brendan Badenhorst fretted over a worn sprocket, race leaders Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer were at one of the many river crossings, with another huge turnout of spectators to watch the fun and the drama. And drama there was, with Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smelberger now second overall in the yellow Toyota Land Cruiser. The pair had moved ahead of special vehicle leaders Mark Corbett and Juan Moore in what was a thoroughly impressive performance from the comparative newcomers to off-road racing. The Land Cruiser ploughed its way through thick mud, with Corbett and Moore following in their wake in the Jimco. The crowds loved it, and charging along in fourth overall were Arpi Reinicker and Robin Houghton in the Castrol Toyota Land Cruiser. The Land Cruiser was in full sail, with Reinicker and Houghton still involved in a little game of catch-up with the cars ahead of them. Not so lucky in the mud and the slush were Shamir Variauer and Bucks Carolyn, with the Cornbake Foods Jimco getting well and truly bogged down. Rescue operations were underway when Greg Harvey and Boyce Stone came along in the Castrol Queen Motorspares Jimco and moved ahead of Variauer and Carolyn in the special vehicle category. A complicated system of tow ropes, other 4x4 vehicles, and some old-fashioned muscle power were now in operation, where Variauer and Carolyn were concerned. And it did the trick, with the pair finally making it onto firmer ground. The tricky conditions proved to be no problem for Hannes Hodler and Richard Leake in the BP Nissan Hardbody. The crowd was by now well and truly into the swing of things, with Class D leaders Enzo Kun and Francois Jordan getting an enthusiastic welcome, as they also made it through the mud with no fuss or bother. Next on the scene was the Chenoweth of the Duplessis brothers, Gerard and Lawrence. Gerard, who was now flying solo after Lawrence was forced to bail out early on day one, suffering from severe nausea. The next crew to get stuck in the mud were Cliff Barker and Vic Camphor in the Quadrishaw Land Rover. Much to the delight of the huge crowd, the mud patch then produced a kaleidoscope of entertainment. They came by car, bike or quad, and they conquered, or got stuck in the mud. With so much fun and action going on in the mud, when the midfield hordes arrived on the scene, the crowds refused to budge. A great time was being had by all, but a few competitors must have wondered where the organisers managed to find so much water and mud in the middle of Botswana in midwinter. For doughty competitors like Class B leader Giel Nel, it was all part of off-road racing.
The tracks is just getting deeper like this, also in the river beds, you know. And they run the stickers off, so you can't follow the road nicely. But we're getting there, no problem.
We'll be back with more mud, sweat and gears from the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. With all the mud, sweat and gears from the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. Into the home stretch on the Toyota 1000, and Neil Woolrich and Kenny Schulthammer were now in sight of their third win in 4 outings this season. There was hardly a mark on the Mitsubishi Pajero, and with the engine notes sounding as crisp and clear as at the start, the pair were simply cruising towards the checkered flag. Behind the overall leaders, Mark Corbett and Juan Moore were running second overall and leading the special vehicle category in the Jimco. Corbett and Moore were in full control of the special vehicle class, but the battle still raged between 2 Land Cruiser crews, with the factory Castrol Toyota entry of Arpi Reinicker and Robin Houghton now ahead of Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smelberger. Along the way, there was an anxious moment or two for Wiechelt and Smelberger. They were back into the role of chasing after Reinicker and Houghton in an ongoing saga between the two crews. While Wiechelt and Smelberger resumed their chase of the factory Land Cruiser, the works Mitsubishi Colt of Enzo Kun and Francois Jordan was moving inexorably towards taking overall honours in Class D. Kun and Jordan had a comfortable lead, and with the finish in sight, there was no point in pushing too hard over the tighter parts of the route. The pair were understandably nursing home a vehicle that had taken a pounding over 2 days of tough racing. On the bike front, Darrell Curtis was also firmly in control of proceedings on the AGA LG Castrol KTM. Before the event, the team decided to switch Curtis onto a 380 KTM, with the move paying dividends with the Johannesburg-based rider in dominant form. In dominant form in Class E among the vehicles were Andrew and Chris Birkin in the Toyota Hilux. With early pace setters Jean-Pierre Joubert and Errol Hodgson running into problems, the brothers were coasting towards the Class E win. Still pushing as hard as he could was 250 bike leader Elmer Simons on another AGA LG Castrol KTM, while in the quad category, Jacques Struwik had taken over the lead on the Answer FMF Yamaha. Struwik was in sight of his maiden national championship win, and along the way, thorn bushes and other obstacles had torn away the trademark flag that normally flutters behind the rider. Despite a few problems along the way with the route marking, Giel Nel was in complete charge of Class B in the single-seater Sandmaster. Nel took charge of the class with the retirement of Marius Borain and was around half an hour clear of Gerald Mundell after another workmanlike drive. Up at the finish, a huge crowd was waiting to welcome home Toyota 1000 Desert Race winners Neil Woolrich and Kenny Scholthammer. The Pajero team Advance Guard were again on hand for the pair, and apart from a little stutter right at the start of the event, Woolrich and Scholthammer were in total control and ground the opposition into the dirt.
Absolutely unbelievable. To win the desert race is really something special. This is like the Monaco of Grand Prix, Very special.
A tremendous performance saw Mark Corbett and Juan Moore storm home second overall and first in the special vehicle category in the Jimco. There was joy in the camp with the two youngsters reporting a remarkably trouble-free run over the 2 days.
We had one puncture, we lost the route a bit and we were dwelling through the bush and hit a rock. But other than that, nothing.
There was more drama when Cliff Wiechelt and Johan Smelberger were the third crew home in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. Toyota management were anxiously awaiting the appearance of the factory Castrol Toyota crew of Arpi Reinecker and Robert Houghton, who'd picked up a puncture 14 kilometers from the finish. That dropped them behind the Wiechelt-Smelberger combination, with the factory crew also having a few problems finding their way to the finish line. A little parking lot incident just went to prove that it was not a good day for Reinecker and Houghton. Reinecker's daughter was getting a little animated as the team waited for the arrival of the Land Cruiser. The Reinecker-Houghton tussle with Wiechelt and Smelberger had been a feature of the event, with the two Land Cruisers constantly trading places in a scrap that swayed backwards and forwards. The puncture, 14 kilometers from the end, was the final straw for Reinecker.
We got past the N1 Land Cruiser and we were on Corbett's tail, and then we hit a puncture 14 k's from the finish, and that ruined our race from what we thought might be a second place to a fourth place overall.
So, special vehicle and production vehicle wins going to Corbett and Moore and Woolrich and Scholthammer. There were also class wins for Giel Nel, Kuhn and Jordan and the Birkin brothers. Storming home to put the finishing touches to a tremendous performance was overall bike winner Daryl Curtis, with the AGA LG Castrol KTM rider a more than popular victor.
Didn't have any problems with the bike at all today. It was like a dream come true. And normally I have some other niggly little problem, like the brakes go or something like that. I lost my brakes. They faded from the last refuel to home, but it didn't slow me down too much because they came and went, so it wasn't a problem for me.
Overall victory in the open class to Daryl Curtis ahead of veteran Jeremy Davies, with Elmer Simons taking the 250 class ahead of Jade Goodseat. First home in the 200 category was Kevin Fisher, who was followed by Wayne Farmer. Making a spectacular appearance at the finish was quad winner Jacques Struwik on the Answer FMF Yamaha. A tired and battered Struwik was overwhelmed with his win, with excited family members sharing his moment of glory.
It was hard work, but at the end of the day it's worth every bit of it. This morning I thought it's not going to last, but hard work pays off.
A maiden national win for Jacques Struwik ahead of Brendan Bartenhorst and Paul Chomser, with Cornel de Villiers and David Parkinson completing the top 5. And that wraps up all the mud, sweat and gears from the Toyota 1000 Desert Race.